of ASHA International. Hi again. My name is Gayathri Ramprasad. I'm the founder and president of ASHA International, a nonprofit organization dedicated to normalizing conversations about mental health and inspiring hope and well-being, one story at a time. Thank you all for joining us. The COVID pandemic is upended our lives and impacting every aspect of our day-to-day lives, including our mental health. Our goal is to share stories of hope and resilience and offer wellness tips and resources to all of you and let you know that no matter how you're feeling today, no matter what your struggles are, you are not alone. Together, we will rise through these difficult times, stronger, kinder, and more resilient. Today, I am delighted to welcome Eric Martz to share his story and talk about the healing power of peers. Eric recently graduated from high school and will be starting as a freshman at Stanford University after taking a gap year. As an ASHA storyteller, Eric's story has inspired and given hope and empowered hundreds of students to take charge of their mental health and well-being. Eric is also the founder of Live to Tell, a student-run suicide prevention nonprofit organization. Please feel free to post your questions and comments during my conversation with Eric. We'll be too happy to answer. Hi, Eric.
Hi.
Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'd like to just invite you to the conversation on hope and well-being today. And to start off, just invite you to share your story.
Yeah. Like Gayathri said, I am a recent graduate of high school. And so in high school, high school is tough for a lot of people. It was definitely tough for me at first, but it was definitely a very transformative experience for me. And the change from freshman year to senior year me was something that I would never have seen coming. I started off as a freshman in a very different position than I am now. I'm the youngest of four boys, and all my brothers are college football players and fraternity presidents. At the time, as a freshman, I was a closeted gay kid that was kind of struggling with the dichotomy between the life that I was kind of expected to live and the life that I was kind of wanting to go down with, like academics and music. And so that really took a toll on my mental health. I remember just really struggling with depression and anxiety that I was too afraid to talk about. It wasn't something that I'd ever been raised talking about, and I had no idea what was happening to me. I felt like I was making it up, that it was invalid, that I was weak for feeling that way. I remember feeling kind of like I wish something really bad happened to me so that like other people could actually understand the pain that I was in without having to, seem weak for just, talking about something that nobody else could see but me. And so my freshman and sophomore year, I was really suicidal, and I was really struggling. And it took me a long time before I was able to get the courage really to reach out. But that experience was really transformative for me, because I think little by little, as I began to talk to my friends about like my mental health first, and then my LGBTQ identity as a gay teenager, I slowly started to feel a little bit more comfortable with who I was and a little bit more hopeful about the future. I remember just little by little, I was able to do things like quit, varsity football, which was something that I hated, but I did because I was expected to. And now when I look back at it, I'm like, how did I ever do that? And start to focus on the things I loved. But I realized my junior year that even though I was going through this journey, I kind of thought I was totally alone with it. And it took me till I realized that, well, one day I was just sitting in the library with at a computer before school doing homework, like frantically studying, I think, for some tests that I was not prepared for. And there's this girl like right next to me that I kind of vaguely recognized, but she had a suicide note in her binder, and it was sitting out there for anyone to see, anyone to notice, really. Um, and I noticed, and I had no idea what to do. I kind of panicked, and looking back on it, I probably could have done a better job at really talking to her, but I was too afraid to talk about it. I instead I wrote her a note, sitting right next to her, gave her my phone number, and told her to call me if she needed anything, and that I, I wanted to be there for her, and she did call me, and expressed that she was really suicidal, and we got her to a counselor, and she's doing fine now, and she says hi to me in the hallways, and it's great, but I realized that time that I really needed to be in a position where I could help others going through what I went through. Um, so I joined organizations like Youthline, which is a teen crisis and support hotline in Portland, as a volunteer call worker. So I've been doing that for over a year. I answer calls and texts and emails and chats about anything from sexual abuse to suicide to relationship issues. And I've learned how to be able to support my peers, just how my peers supported me when I was going through this, because I really think that when when a problem like this, especially with mental health, is speakable, it's bearable, and it's really really important to be able to feel validated, and not feel like something's wrong with you, or that you're weak, for struggling with mental health. So as I started to gain my confidence a little bit in this effort, I started joining other organizations, and I ended up starting my own nonprofit, because in Salem, where I live, suicide has been a really large problem. That year that I was going through this journey of kind of recovering from mental health and going to therapy and everything, 6 students in my city died by suicide just in high schools alone. So it was and that was the most in a long time. And so I kind of realized that this was something that was affecting a lot of people, and not that much was being done, especially from the student side, to try to help. So I created this student-led nonprofit to support other students going through problems like this. I started clubs in schools for suicide prevention, and I learned that in one of our surveys that we did actually at my high school, we found 1 in 5 people, 20% of my school's population had considered suicide in the last 3 months. And that was really the moment where I realized how widespread this problem is and how it is everywhere. And that makes it all the more important that we do talk about it and that we do normalize conversation and share stories, so that all those people, I mean, that is about 400 people at my school of 2,000, 400 kids, that those people are able to feel empowered to reach out for help.
Well, and by sharing your story today, Eric, you're doing exactly that. Not just today, but every day. That's exactly what you have been doing, helping youth like yourself, stand up and share their stories and get the help that they need to literally live, to survive. And then, of course, we hope to go on to thrive. And, as you were sharing your story, oftentimes all it takes is just one person to stop what they're doing, to really see you, to really hear you, love you, accept you, respect you, and say, I'm here for you. No matter what, I'm here to walk with you. I'm here to support you in this journey. And thank you for doing that for your fellow student at your school. That's really all it takes. And I know, in your journey and in my journey, we have been lucky to have people like us. that one person in that one moment of darkness to stand by us and to love us and to hold us and say, I love you and I'm here for you. Have there been people, I know there have been several people in your life. Do you want to just share the story of just one such person that was there for you in your moment of need, that helped you feel accepted and loved and supported?
Yeah, I think the first person to come to mind was when I was really in like one of my darkest places, um, kind of at the the lowest point when I was really struggling with my identity and I was still totally closeted and really struggling with suicidal ideation and my depression. Um, I reached out to a pastor at my church, and I was not close to him because I'm not really close with my church. Um, but I reached out to him, and it was very inspiring to me because this is one of like the happiest people I know. But I did know that he shared some similarities with me. He is gay, which was it was very helpful for me to find some kind of representation, someone who has gone through the same thing. Because really, I think he was the first person I'd ever met and talked to that was gay in like my very straight community. And but he also not only that was like a suicide attempt survivor, and he had struggled with depression, anxiety, and like suicidal ideation for a long, long time in his life. And he really had gotten through it, and um, was someone who's really thriving now in his spiritual life, in his mental health. And I just remember him reminding me of all the things that were to come that were so amazing that I couldn't see yet. And I remember being so um, relieved, I guess I think is the right word, to hear those words of encouragement and to feel validated in what I was struggling with and to feel like I wasn't alone in it because he really had gone through almost the exact same experience growing up. And that really gave me hope to reach out to a therapist and then to really work on my journey of recovery.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And that's really why we need to share our stories, whether it is about, being gay or struggling with mental health conditions, or like me, being from a culture like India, where there's so much stigma and shame surrounding, mental illness and mental health conditions, representation matters. And for that, people like you and I need to step out of the shadows and stand in the light and share our love and our truth so others can see themselves in us and know that no matter what their struggles are, they're not alone. We're in this together, and we can help each other, we can give hope to each other, and point each other in the right direction of where to get the help that we need. So thank you. And I'm so grateful for your pastor. I'm so grateful for you for doing all that you do every single day. Sharing our story is terrifying. For most of us, just public speaking can be so terrifying. And here you are, sharing your story, not just with me today, but in so many public forums, right? So, and I, at ASHA International, we truly believe that our story is our superpower. So what inspired you to share your story, your superpower?
Oh, that's a hard question. Because yeah, I mean, I am someone who is so scared of talking about this. To anyone watching that is, feeling like they can never do what I'm doing, know that you can because I can't and I'm doing it. um, so what made me willing to reach out or to speak out about this was I think the same problem really that you just talked about was the fact that I felt so underrepresented in a lot of ways, and the fact that really no like in my high school, for example, no one was openly gay. It was heavily stigmatized, and it still is. And mental health things were just not talked about. There were no support systems other than the counselors who are rarely used for mental health. And I just realized that like if I'm going through this, there must be other people going through it too. And um, the lack of representation makes them feel more alone and more in pain because of that. So I I really tried to do it for them, but I mean, in another way, I guess it does benefit. It helps me too, really. I mean, it does help me because it is empowering to talk about it, and it makes me feel better. And it makes me feel better to talk about it. It makes me feel stronger to be able to share my story, um, and it makes me feel like I am like succeeding or making progress. And I think that's always encouraging, to be able to reflect on where you came from and where you're going, because I mean I forget it all the time. I know everyone does, and I guess it's a valuable experience.
I couldn't agree more with you. As empowering as it is, as frightening as it is to share your story, it is equally empowering. It sets you free to be you, authentically, honestly, you at every moment of your life, and and it empowers the listener as well. And that's the magic of stories. That's it connects us, it comforts us, it inspires us, it empowers us. And so, yeah, thank you again for sharing your story. There's a lot of parallels in terms of the stigma and shame and the deep sense of disconnect and isolation that people experiencing mental health conditions experience and people within the LGBTQ community experience. And they're interconnected oftentimes, and you can correct me, people within the LGBTQ community are struggling with their mental health conditions because of the deep sense of stigma, not just sense of deep, real stigma, shame, and the isolation and disconnect that they experience. So coming out and speaking your truth is hard. So what were some of the obstacles you experienced in being gay and experiencing mental health conditions and just coming out and speaking up about it? What were some of those barriers and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I did grow up an athlete, and I grew up in playing football, basketball, and baseball, and a lot of the times when I was on those teams, I would hear slurs against like the LGBT community. I hear a lot of jokes made at others' expense, but made at the expense of LGBT people.
Mhm.
Um, and I just remember feeling so conditioned to like think that that was not acceptable. And I remember like as I started to figure that out when I was pretty young, around like 11 or 12, I think, um, just kind of becoming like terrified at that reality because I was becoming exactly what I was. I mean, not that I personally was against, but what so many in my life were like telling me not to be. Um, and that was really the only conversation I was um, exposed to because there wasn't that many positive experiences going on or positive storytelling with LGBT youth. Um, Even little things like saying like that's so gay as an insult.
Mhm.
I just remember being like, I mean, well, if that's an insult, then what does that make me if that's my like identity? Like what like how can I reconcile the fact that this is something I can't change? Um, yeah, it's something so you know looked down upon in my community. So I remember that was even harder for me than talking about my mental health, surprisingly,
Yeah.
um, just because it was something that I had learned to conceal for so long, for all my life. Whereas my mental health really like started my challenges with mental health really started when I was about 13 or 14. Um, and like you said, they really are intersectional. The stigma of both was very real, and the stigma, but also just the silence, I think, is
Mhm.
something that is not talked about enough, either, is that, like, by staying silent about that, it does make it feel like it's not okay to be talked about. Um, and so I was just raised in a family and in a community that didn't talk about it, and that was uncomfortable talking about it. And I made me incredibly uncomfortable to talk about it, but also incredibly uncomfortable to, you know, to be who I was because that was who I was. So I just remember really. struggling with that. But I guess by coming out, it made me feel more empowered to talk about my mental health. And by talking about my mental health, it made me feel more empowered to talk about my queer identity. And I do want to emphasize that it's not the journey's not done. I'm still pretty bad at talking about it. And a lot of times in everyday life, it's something that I'm uncomfortable sharing. But I try to. I really do, because I think that, like Gayathri said, being authentic and honest with who you are really does lift a load off of yourself and make you feel a lot more free and content. And even though it's really, really hard in the moment, and I remember getting huge stomach aches when I came out to a friend or a family member, or getting huge stomach aches when I talked about my mental health, and they didn't go away for like 4 hours afterward too, and I still felt so awful. It made the problems that I was facing a little bit more bearable, and even more and more bearable as time went on, because I had acknowledged them and shared my truth with others. And by sharing that truth, it made me kind of accept that also. Yeah.
See, that's the thing about, the truth. It not only helps you accept yourself, it helps others to accept themselves. And it's a ripple effect, and it's such an incredibly powerful, experience to be a part of. It's scary, but once you accept yourself and you share your story, you find your community of people that accept you and love you and respect you for just being you. And now you've found a family,
Yeah.
a community, of love and of support, unconditional support. And that is so, so powerful, which, makes me think about now during the pandemic and the quarantining and all of that. It's really concerning. There's a lot of youth, to be specific, who are also, just like the rest of humanity, struggling even more so with their anxiety and depression, mental health in general. And also kids within the LGBTQ community who are struggling with both their identity and their mental health, who are now cut off from the supports of the community that we were just talking about. And even supports within the school, whatever supports the school had in place for these youth, and often, sometimes they're also quarantining with family members who don't necessarily accept and embrace their identity or love them and respect them. So it's a really difficult, traumatic situation that we are find ourselves in. And so, what is your advice for youth like yourself out there who might be struggling with all of these factors?
Yeah. The examples that you've shared are ones that I come into contact with every week on Youthline, because oftentimes those are the only people. I mean, we are the only people that they feel comfortable reaching out to, and that's only a small percentage of people struggling with these challenges of being stuck at home or disconnected or isolated from their communities or their resources for help and support. My encouragement it would be two things. First, if you can, reach out to anyone that you think will support you unconditionally. And not all of us are fortunate enough to have resources like that, but even a suicide hotline or a trans hotline, or there are so many hotlines that are all running right now and all answering. They're all on the phone wanting to talk to you. With Youthline, it's special in the sense that it's peer-to-peer. There are teenagers on the other side of the line, like me and lots of other amazing youth that are there to support you too. And I think the other big piece is to hold out hope that you are not alone in this, and that even though you are surrounded by a family or surrounded by friends right now that are not supportive of an aspect of your identity or of your your situation currently, whether it's mental health or LGBTQ or any other minority status or abuse. Um, it's so important to know that this can be temporary and this can be something that you can not only like prevail from but really thrive afterward. Um, it's really hard sometimes to feel like you're not alone during this time, because these problems are inherently isolating. Like mental health, even if you are with a bunch of people, it can make you feel like you're totally alone. But being physically isolated on top of that makes it 10 times worse. So knowing that it's really not the case that other people are struggling and that there is support out there and that this is temporary is really important. Um, and then just, okay, my last piece of advice is to take care of yourself, um, to really prioritize self-care and to prioritize, doing things you love and being with those you love, even if it's just your pets or with your favorite TV character. Really, it can make a big difference to do what makes you feel happy, especially at a time where sadness or loneliness is kind of an omnipresent feeling right now.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice, Eric. So, um, uh, what gives you hope?
A lot of things. I think for me, that second piece of advice is what I really live by, is remembering that there is a future full of amazing things in store. Um, and so I, even in quarantine in a bad situation, really try to look forward. Um, I always have something to look forward to. It's something I say I have to have something to look forward to every week, and I have to have something long term to look forward to in the next few months and in the year. And I love creating goals and um, just creating paths to grow
Mhm.
in the future. I know that seems kind of strange in a way that I mean, not strange, but just unnecessary. But I think that it's so important to have that hope, even in the smallest things or the big things. Whether it's self improvement or fun, that doesn't really matter. But I really find hope in um, just the potential in the future and what I can make of it. Um, and it's a fun thing to daydream about.
Absolutely. Talking about daydreams and real dreams, what are your dreams for the future?
Well, as Gayathri mentioned, I am taking a gap year. So even though there's a lot of uncertainty with the coronavirus and how that's going to affect plans, I decided to take this gap year because my school at Stanford is totally online. So I am hopefully going to be teaching abroad in France and getting paid to do that. And my dream for this year, which is something that is kind of an anomaly, is to be able to travel a lot of Europe, to travel the world, to see the world. I've I've been kind of isolated in my city. I've lived here my whole life, and I want to get out. I want to, I want to see these new communities and to find these new, um, the new communities that are supportive. That I feel like I can be myself around and to learn more about myself through that. So for the next year, my dream is really to learn more about the world and about myself through it. Um, Long term, I have a lot of dreams, and they're all very vague at this point. But my main priority is just to get to a place where I feel, happy about myself and happy about the work that I'm doing. Um, and I know that's about as vague as it can possibly get, but it's something that I am constantly trying to work toward.
It's not vague at all. There's a beautiful quote. It says, "Follow your dreams. They know the way."
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're doing, Eric. You are super awesome, amazing. You inspire me every day in everything I do. And you are such a reminder to me and everyone out there in the world that our struggles don't define us.
Thank you.
And yeah, I am so proud of just who you are as a human being, of your dreams, your accomplishments, your goals, and I wish you the very best, Eric. Thank you for being with us. We'll connect again really soon. Lots of love to you.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, to all of you, thank you for joining us today. Again, what an inspiring young man. If you or someone you love is struggling with their mental health or identity issues, again, you are not alone. There is hope, there is help out there. And here at ASHA International, we are here to let you know that you're not alone. We have a lot of, first of all, we have more than 150 stories of hope and of resilience to inspire you in your own journey. And we have a lot of wellness resources, including articles on health and wellness, and conversations like these with other people who are in their own journey to health and well-being, to inspire you and to empower you in your journey as well. Please join us again September 11th, Friday, on Facebook and YouTube for our next conversation on hope and well-being. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a wonderful weekend ahead. Bye-bye.